the first thing you want when you're born?
The breast. You want the milk.
Well, you do crawl to it. You only crawl to it because you can't have what you want, and that's to get back in.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's called heterosexuality when you're 18 years old. So you want to get back in. You want to die. You don't want to exist as an independent, autonomous entity separated from your mother's body. That scares the shit out of you. This is the birth of Mortido. So we claim that this is basic, and we agree with Freud here. He calls it the death drive. The problem is the contemporary society is then full of people who live immersed in this when they grow older, because the one thing that should happen to you when you cannot get back in is that you will deny that you want to get back in. You crawl at the breast, you start sucking it, and that's the birth of libido. Mm-hmm. Libido is that within you that wants to live. Mortido is that within you that wants to die. What we call this book digital libido is we then trace what it is within us as human beings that does want to live. And even if it's a denial process originally, it works, and we should stay with it our entire lives. And I can assure you this one thing. If you want to get enlightened and you want to go extinguished and you don't want to exist any longer and stop existing and suffering or whatever you want to do, that will happen to you anyway. It's called death. Mm-hmm. Don't worry, it will happen. So I'm a Zoroastrian rather than a Buddhist, right? So I'm a Zoroastrian in the sense that I think it's great that we have a libido and we should actually use it our entire lives. And libido is the reason why we want to get up in the morning and go to work and have kids and have a life and find partners and do art and do amazing stuff and then have lived a full life when we're old people, then we're ready to die. Mm-hmm. That's the whole idea, moving towards some kind of a wholeness before you die. And if you're lucky, having had a full life and a whole life is the meaning of being human. So that means libido is absolutely essential to me. Unfortunately, our contemporary society is full of Mortido everywhere. It's full of what Nietzsche regretted and said, a slave mentality. It's just seeking submission all the time. Why? Because it's more comfortable and less energy consuming.
For sure.
Why can't I just find somebody whose ass I can lick so I don't have to make any decisions myself? Mm-hmm. And out of a lack of self-confidence, many people end up there too.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that right now with like the environmental movement. And every other article every day is like, we're pushing towards eating crickets and like stop using stuff and just do less and less and less until you live in a pod, and it's rough.
Well, I'm strongly opposed to it, not because I'm opposed to, I understand climate change is happening and the climate deniers are wrong, but what we're doing here in Sweden, we're working on a new model. We're going to split up the environmentalist movement, which is long overdue because it's too dogmatic today. And I'd call these two movements eco-moralism and ecotopianism.
Okay.
Eco-moralism is where environmentalism has ended up today. It's just blaming you for existing in the first place. Like if you just died, somehow the world would be better. Well, there'd be nobody here to enjoy it, so what would be the point, okay? Mm-hmm. But eco-moralists are so cynical now. They love their Mortido so much. They just want people to go away because people are evil. It's just about everything else out there is good and people are evil. It's incredibly sort of nasty fairy tale version of the world. It's blatantly untrue. The ecotopians, though, are guys who are interested in architecture and engineering to solve these problems and go straight to the problem solution. That means you're going to see the ecotopians in the 2020s probably be strong opponents of nuclear power, strong opponents of genetically modified food. And they're going to love pissing off their mums who invested their entire lives in eating organic food. That's actually destructive to the climate because organic food takes more land to grow than genetically modified food. And you need pesticides to grow organic food. You don't need pesticides to grow genetically modified food because it is genetically modified precisely not to have to use pesticides. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, any technological solution we can have that sort of puts a brake on climate change would be great. Then we can pursue how can we create, for example, sustainable, cheap energy in huge amounts, because then we can solve all the other problems of humanity. How can we desalinate water on a massive scale? These are the real problems of people around the world today. If you can only make it slightly cheaper, more efficient to desalinate water, that solves a lot of problems for people. If you can get rid of malaria, that solves a lot of problems for people. This requires technological changes, and the name for this fantasy is ecotopianism. The name for that planet is ecotopia. Mm-hmm. It's a completely cultivated planet where the whole planet has been turned into some kind of a garden of Babel. And there's not a single corner on the planet that isn't covered with sensors, so we know what's going on. We can make informed decisions about what we need to do to save ourselves from climate change.
Yeah, this is a very positive like view of the future. It's because someone tweeted yesterday, I can't remember exactly who, like right now it's so much talk about like, more general talk, but then why don't we just put out more books on material science? Why don't we, for every time we have a kid crying about the environment, why don't we just give them books on like what's the atmospheric chemistry, or like why are we not actually providing solutions and only crying about the end of the world?
Well, it's just moralism now. The funny thing is this: it was my students here in Stockholm who created the Greta Thunberg phenomenon.
Oh, really?
And then I became like her nasty uncle on Twitter going after her, like, because she's just a 60-year-old girl, and this easy, simple moralism. If she dared to talk about nuclear power, for example, I would really admire her, but she won't. No, she goes to the UN and yells at her parents. Well, that's easy for any 60-year-old to do. It doesn't really provide us with the solutions from you either, Greta. So at the end of the day, I don't think these naive solutions about moralism and about us being nasty people, and if only we're good people, we solve these problems, that's just children's fairy tales. It's not going to solve the major problems. We're going to have huge costs due to climate change. But I would compare that to possible third world war, which would be way costlier. So I would say the real threat against humanity today is still nuclear power and nuclear weapons being spread.
Mm.
And if nuclear weapons spread around the world, that's a major hassle for us to deal with, because nuclear devastation, that would beat the shit out of climate change, to be honest about it.
People really do underestimate the like what 3D printers plus like a library and some raw materials can do.
Exactly. So you got a drone, you got a 3D printer, and you got a bomb recipe bought in Pakistan or somewhere, and you got a little terrorist and they got a nuclear bomb within the next 10 years. That's a very realistic scenario. That scares the shit out of me way more than climate change. I'm sorry, but it does. Climate change will happen anyway. It's going to be costly and messy, yes. The question is, can we put a brake on it so it's less dramatic? That would be a good thing. But at the end of the day, how do we create a planet called Ecotopia on which we can live and become true cosmopolitans?
Mm-hmm.
That's where we must arrive with philosophy. All the philosophers in my generation agree that this is the overall goal. This is the vision.